Hey everyone, today on the Gilbert.K show, we're joined by Emily Ting, award-winning director of Netflix's Girl Haunts Boy and Tall Girl 2, and the creative force behind some of Hallmark's most beloved holiday films. From supernatural romance to heartfelt storytelling, she's redefining modern filmmaking. Let's welcome Emily Ting.
Hey Emily, how are you today?
Good, good. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining me. Before we dive in, let's take a moment to watch a clip from your work and what we're going to see or listen to.
So this is going to be a trailer for Girl Haunts Boy, which came out in October of last year, and it's currently available on Netflix. So it
Ex-
stars Peyton List and Michael Cimino in sort of a paranormal YA rom-com.
Excellent. Let's watch it or listen to it.
So, what do you think, Cole? I think we're going to be really happy here.
Everything okay up there?
Everything's fine.
Hey. I was talking to you. They never answer back.
Hey.
Whoa. Is that the ring I took from you?
Okay, great. So when you look back at your younger self in Taiwan, did you ever imagine your name would one day be trending on Netflix front page?
I mean, even as of 5 years ago, that felt like such an impossible dream, let alone when I was growing up as a kid. Um, like making films was something that I've always wanted to do. But I thought when I made my indie films, that was kind of it. Like I felt fulfilled, like, oh, I got to tell my stories. I never really imagined that someday I could actually turn it into a career and get hired to direct films for Netflix. And like I said, as of 5 years ago, that still seems like such an impossible dream. So, and I think when I was growing up in Taiwan, I probably didn't even know I wanted to be a filmmaker. That was something that I discovered, I think, not until I was in high school and applying to college that I realized that that's something that I wanted to do.
Wow, that's amazing. So you lived in LA. Before you stepped into the director's chair, you wore the producer's hat.
Mhm.
What was one behind the scenes lesson that changed how you tell stories forever?
I feel like my time as a producer, especially on low budget independent films, have really prepared me to be a more flexible director. I feel like sometimes, a lot of directors are very set in their ways and, like this is how I envision in my head and this is how I want to do things. But
Yeah.
having been on the other side, the one that has to like control the budget and, making sure everything runs, I feel like I'm more empathetic to
Mhm.
budget restraints and learning to pivot. Um, obviously when I did my two indie films, we had very little money, but even when I stepped into like Tall Girl 2 and Girl Haunts Boy, where the budget was much higher, you still don't have enough money.
Yeah.
That's just sort of the truism in filmmaking. No matter how much money and time you have, you never have enough.
Mhm.
So, for example, on Girl Hunts Boy, I really had my heart set on painting the kitchen a certain color from a color palette, and I had a very specific look I wanted, but we didn't have the budget for the manpower that it required to do that. So I had to pivot very quickly, and we're like, okay, let's just take off the cabinet doors and put
Yeah.
colorful and pretty bowls and plates inside. So, because it was a very like the house that we shot in had this very old school charm, but the kitchen had a very 80s,
Yeah.
like it just didn't match the rest of the house. So, and that was literally a trick that I used on a movie I produced called The Kitchen, where that movie we had very little money. Obviously, we couldn't afford to paint and all that stuff, and we just took off the ugly, kitchen cabinet doors. So these are just little tricks that like I picked up on a micro budget film that to this day we're still using on big studio movies because the budget is the budget. And
That's
when you
true.
run out of money, you got to think of creative ways to achieve the look that you want.
Yeah, that's a great answer. So how do you keep your like every director has their own vision, and you can tell, like when you watch a certain director, you can say, oh, this
Yeah.
is the this director's signature. So how do you balance your signature, make sure you get your voice and your vision, but at the same time you want to, because it's a collaborative
Right.
effort. So how do you balance that?
Um, I feel like even on my, on an indie film, obviously, like you have a lot more say. I
Yeah.
think um on a studio film where you're getting paid, it becomes very collaborative because suddenly I have producers above me in the studio.
Yeah.
And that honestly, I think for anyone that's stepping into studio filmmaking from an indie, I think that's probably the biggest change and biggest shock. It's like all of a sudden you have to listen to everyone's notes. And I think like that was the biggest learning curve on Tall Girl 2, where it was my first film. But just learning to navigate that. I mean, even when you get a note that you might not necessarily agree with, you still have to try it. And you have to try it in your artful
Yeah.
way. And if it doesn't work for you, you should articulate why it doesn't work for you. But you can't just flat out be like, no, that's a
No.
terrible no. Like when they're
Yeah.
the people paying you, right? Um, but on both of the studio films, I felt like the studio was pretty hands off in terms of my vision. Like I pitched a vision of like what I wanted to do visually, and presumably that's how I was hired for the job, that they agreed with my vision or was able to go along with it. Both times, I had very kind of distinct I had a very distinct color palette that I wanted to use
Yeah.
in both films, like stylistically, visually. And not once did they come in and say, oh, you can't do that, or no, that's not what we were thinking of. So, even at the studio level, as a director, I mean, they hire you for your vision, and there is a certain trust that they
Yeah.
need to have with the directors that they hire. So yeah, I think like across all four of my features, I have never really had to compromise sort of my vision for the film.
Yeah.
But like notes come in when you hand in an edit and maybe they want certain scenes cut or they want certain scenes to move fast.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's those kind of notes. But the
Right.
overall vision, I feel like both films turned out exactly the way I had wanted them to.
That's great. And in terms of cast, do you have a say on the cast, or it depends on the projects, probably?
Um, so on my indie films, absolutely. I
Yeah.
cast all the actors. On Tall Girl 2, it was a sequel. So I kind of inherited
Yeah.
the core cast, but they were lovely to work with. For the new characters that we cast in that film, I was part of the casting process, but Netflix was the one that ultimately made the final choice. I mean, most of the time we're aligned,
Yeah. Yeah.
but if there's a tiebreaker, it usually goes to the studio.
Yeah.
On Girl Hunts Boy, Peyton List was already attached to the film before I even came along. But Michael Cimino's role, we did cast and we did auditions and chemistry reads for that. And I think right from the get go, like Michael was my first choice, so was the studio. And everyone kind of just aligned once we saw his. I think what really sold it was his chemistry read with Peyton. Like you could just tell once, and they didn't
Yeah.
even do it in person. They did it on Zoom, but
Yeah.
there's just a certain energy you could tell when two people get together. So it was kind of a no-brainer once we saw them read together.
Yeah. That's great. Um, so you lived in LA, Hong Kong, and Taipei. How have those cities shaped your cinematic voice visually and emotionally?
I feel like I really discovered my voice as a filmmaker um, during my time in Hong Kong. Um, and just like a very quick backstory, I lived in Hong Kong for like about for most of my 20s basically, and I was doing something totally not related to film. I was working for my family's toy business, and so I had gone to Hong Kong thinking that was sort of my my death sentence in a way of my dreams. Like I had gone to film school, I wanted to become a filmmaker, but then, I sort of got guilted into taking this detour to work for the family business. Um, but ironically, I feel like I might not have become a filmmaker or the filmmaker I am today if it weren't for my time working for the family business in Hong Kong. Because first, I worked in the family business for over a decade, and that was the money that I used to finance my first film, Already Tomorrow in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
And my first two features were both about my experiences of going back to Hong Kong and China and working for the family business. So not only was I able to, earn the financing that I needed to make these movies, it also inspired the stories that I wanted to tell. So those were some very formative years. So even though I wasn't making movies during my time in Hong Kong, they
Yeah.
inspired me to tell the stories I ended up telling in my first two indies. So I feel a lot of gratitude. Like looking back, now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, that was actually in the end like a good experience because
Yeah.
it led me to become the filmmaker that I am today. But it wasn't until I moved to LA after my stint in Hong Kong that made that dream into a reality. Like in Hong Kong, I dreamt of making films, but it felt like an impossible dream. But it took coming to LA. And once I moved to LA, it took another 10 years of
Wow.
making and working in indie films to finally now working in the studio film, uh, you know, so I keep telling people it was literally a 20-year process for me
Yeah.
after graduating film school to making my first for being getting hired by Netflix to direct my first studio film. So it's a marathon, not a sprint.
That sounds right because I hear people or directors, they say it takes for a director to make it, to break in, takes between 20 to 25 years
Yeah.
to make it. Yeah. Okay, great. Before we move on to the next segment, we're going to play a game called This or That.
Okay.
And in this fun game, I'll give you two options, and you have to pick the one you like the most or
Okay.
the one that fits you better. There are no wrong answers, and you don't need to explain your choice unless you want to. It's all about quick, fun decisions to
Okay.
show us more about you.
So
And
just rapid fire. Okay.
yeah, rapid fire. Okay, are you ready, Emily?
Sure.
Okay, streaming giant or festival circuit?
Oh, festival circuits.
One iconic scene or one viral trailer?
One iconic scene.
Emotional silence or explosive monologue?
Ooh. Wow, this one is hard because I love them both. I would say emotional silence.
Directing teens or directing ghosts?
Oh,
That's a joke.
Working teams.
Writing solo or writer's room vibes?
Writing solo.
LA winter rain or Hong Kong neon nights?
Hong Kong Neon Nights.
Post-production zen or on-set adrenaline?
Post-production zen for sure.
Studio notes or creative chaos?
Whoa. Studio notes. I'm pretty good at addressing them.
Rap party or first table read?
Rap party.
Twins as co-producers or keeping them away from the set?
Keeping them away from the set. Those are some good rapid fire.
Okay, so Go Back to China was rooted in your real life experience. Did making that film feel like therapy, rebellion, or both?
Definitely therapy. I used to joke that it would have cost a lot less money if I had just gone to therapy with my family instead of
Yeah.
making a film about them. But Go Back to China is definitely the most personal film I've ever made, definitely the most autobiographical. Um, And, there's just a lot of things that I wanted to say to my family and my father in particular that I, have never been able to. So I just wrote a movie about it and had my characters say them to each other. Um, and that to me, honestly, like, is my is the best tool I have to cope with, sort of these issues that I have with my family. It was through filmmaking, and I think a lot of people, especially when they make personal stories, um, like it's a very cathartic
Hmm.
kind of process and experience. And
Yeah.
that's a big reason of why I wanted to go into filmmaking. For me, it was an outlet. It's like, how do I address certain things in my family and things that I was going through? And I feel very fortunate I was able to kind of get two very personal stories out of the way, like in Already Tomorrow Hong Kong and Go Back to China. And now I could just sort of make up stories for fun. Like now that you
Yeah.
got the catharsism like out of the way, and now just have fun with your storytelling.
Yeah. That's great. Um, so you've juggled romance, teen angst, ghosts, and Christmas. What do you think draws you to stories that blur identity, love, and cultural tension?
I mean, I'm always gonna have a soft spot for anything that has an Asian American theme or setting or characters. But obviously my first two films were very much about cultural identity. But since then when you're a director for hire, you kind of just sign on to whatever comes my way.
Yeah.
But the one universal thing that I think, more than like the subject matter or the genre or what the film is about, is the heart. Like that's kind of like the one thing that I always look for in all of my projects, before I sign on to anything. Like as a genre, I tend to gravitate towards rom-coms, comedies, family dramedies. I like things that make you feel good, have happy endings, or spread joy. Um, but even with comedies, it's like there has to be that kind of that touching third act and that heart. Like for me, like everything I read that come my way, it's like, is this heartfelt? Does it have a lot of heart? Does it, like I don't want to say teach you a message, but it's this feeling that elicits out of you where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that was very funny. I had a good time, but it was also very touching in various ways. So for me right now, especially when I'm more of a director for hire or I write Christmas movies, where it's not so much like me telling personal stories, I feel like the one through line with everything I work on is, it's usually lighter in nature, but it ends on a very kind of heartfelt um, tone and really hits you in the feels.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Um, so let's talk Girl Hunts Boy. How did you craft a ghost story that's not about fear, but
Uh,
about feelings?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes to what we were just talking about, things that hits you in the feels. So Girl Hunts Boy came to me, the script came to me like right after I just did Tall Girl 2. And I wasn't necessarily looking for I didn't necessarily want to make another like teen rom-com right
Yeah.
away and one where like the boy falls in love with a ghost. The like the premise just sounded so like hokey to me. I'm like, because I'm not into horror movies and I'm not into
Yeah.
like paranormal, but I was like, okay, I'm just gonna read it with an open mind, and I completely fell in love with it. Um, I thought, like the ghost story is sort of like the Trojan horse. It gets you
Yeah.
hooked, and it's really a movie about grief and learning to let go and move on. And by the time we got to the last like third of the movie, I mean, I was crying while I was reading the script. And we got to the
Wow.
last scene, I saw it so clearly in my mind, and it's exactly how we end the movie now on that two shot of them. Um, and while I was reading it, like it was so clear in my mind that I like knew I had to say yes, even though on paper I was like, this isn't really what I'm looking for. Right now I want to do something a
Yeah.
little older and but yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, even though on paper it's like not really what I was looking for, but it touched me, and it ends on such a heartfelt note that I couldn't turn it down. I was like, oh, I definitely want to pitch on this. It was not offered to me. I still
Yeah.
had to like pitch on it and get the job. Um, so yeah, so I think that one is a very good example of something that, like, again, not necessarily something I was looking for, but just touched me completely, that I just had to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you directed Tall Girl 2, a teen rom-com sequel with global expectations. What was the pressure like, and how did it turn into a power?
I think directing Tall Girl 2 was probably the most scary experience of my life. I mean, I had directed 2 features prior to that, but they were like tiny indie films made for like under $500,000, where I was my own boss because I
Yeah.
found the
Yeah. Yeah.
financing, and then I wrote, directed, produced it. Tall Girl 2 was a $20 million movie. Not only that, it was a sequel to a very successful franchise for Netflix. If the first one was not successful, they would not have made a sequel. And Zynga, who directed the first one, was not available. So it was like their original director, went off to bigger and better things, and I have to like step into her shoes. So
Yeah.
it was really terrifying. I have never done a film, of that magnitude before, and also never having bosses above.
Yeah.
Never had to answer to a producer, never had to answer to a studio. Um, and like the people they surrounded me with, like I literally, like my DP, Shane Herbert, like he's McGee's guy, and like the production designer, like everyone has so much more experience than me. I had a really severe case of imposter syndrome every day walking onto. I'm like, I literally don't know like how I got
Yeah.
this job when everyone on set, has done so many of these films, and this was my first one. And it was truly terrifying. But I think what was cool about that was that this is actually literally what Tall Girl 2 is about, because Tall Girl 1 was all about her being bullied by her schoolmates for being tall. So like all of the bullying was external. But
Yeah.
in Fall Girl 2, I thought what the writer did very cleverly was, now the bully is herself. That she's dealing with imposter syndrome, this negative voice in her voice that tells her she's not good enough. It's not coming from outside, it's coming from within her. She
Yeah.
had just landed the lead role in her school play. So it's her grappling with her imposter syndrome and the negative voice in her head, which was exactly what I was dealing with every day when I would step on set. But I think by being in the exact same situation as my lead character protagonist allowed me to literally be in her head. And I
Yeah.
think helped me make a better film and helped me be empathetic. Like I don't have to guess. It's like we
Yeah.
were in it together. So there was a special bond I felt like between me and Ava, who was playing Jodie. Just we both kind of feel like we were going through this same journey. And that was another reason why, it's another movie where on paper, I'm like, oh, well, why would I want to do a sequel? Like, why would I want to set myself up for
Yeah.
failure? But you read the script and you're like, oh, I could really empathize with this, because this is something that, like I would be going through. Um,
Yeah.
so I feel like, yeah, that having that imposter syndrome on that particular film, I turned it into a superpower by making a better film out of it, because I was able to live in the character's head.
Yeah. That's great. Um, there's a strong heartbeat in your dialogue. Do you think your writing process is more rhythm based or intuition based?
Um, I don't know if I've really thought of my writing in either way. I mean, like the way I write is, I feel like a lot of people are the same way. Is like you write your vomit draft, where your characters say exactly what they mean and as plainly as possible, like just get it out on the page. And then it's really kind of in the revisions you go back then you layer in the subtext and then the metaphors and then, the witty one-liners, the jokes, and then the dialogue really kind of takes off. And I feel like the writing I've done in the last few years are very different from my indie. Like,
Yeah.
when I wrote my two indies, they're kind of, there are personal stories, and they're kind of, the characters kind of just talk like real people. Now, when I'm more of a writer for hire and I write these Christmas rom-coms for Hallmark, the dialogue is a lot more stylized than my
Mm.
my indie, because it's like you got to put in like the jokes and the Christmas puns, and it's not really how real people
Yeah.
talk, but it's got a style because it's got to be
The
quippy.
hallmarks.
Everyone is,
Yeah.
yeah, and everyone is like trading witty one-liners, which is fine. And I've gotten much better at writing that way, but that wasn't how I used. Like if you watch Already Tomorrow in Hong Kong, they're just two people walking around talking. They were not really trading one-liners back and forth.
It's
Um,
beautiful. Yeah.
but the scripts that I write now have to, and I feel like that is more rhythm based. It's like you've got to have that like quick, witty, like banter back and forth, back and forth. And there is a certain rhythm to these movies that you have to kind of follow.
Yeah.
So maybe, yeah, my indie films were more intuition based, and
Mm.
films that I'm writing now are more kind of rhythm based.
Yeah. Yeah. So which moment on set uh, across any film made you stop and say, "This is why I do what I do"?
I don't think there's ever been a film that I've directed where I have not cried behind the monitor at least once. There is always a scene in all the films. So in Go Back to China, it's a scene between Carol and her dad when she tells him that she wants to leave the family business. And that was a very emotional scene. I mean, God bless Lynn. She like gave her all in that scene. And I was crying, tearing up behind the monitor. And Tall Girl 2, it's the scene between Ava and Sabrina Carpenter. So between Tall Girl, Jody, and her sister, when her sister was packing up and leaving. And it was a very emotional scene. And then on Girl Hunts Boy, it's literally the last uh, shot of the movie when we got that two shot. And I was like, that's it. That's the end of the movie. And again, I think uh, it always comes back to the heart. So
Yeah.
it's like when we get to, it's like all the jokes and all the fun set pieces leading up. That's all just it's the Trojan horse that gets you hooked. But then like where it hits you in the feels, to me, is why across all four of my films, that's why I wanted to tell that particular story.
Yeah.
And it's gonna work if you on set, it's making it like without the music, without all that stuff, and just the pure emotions of the actors
Yeah.
and their acting and the words. If it can move you to cry on set, like I know, like I got it. Like this is gonna work in the movie.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's a scene like that in all four of my films. So that
That's amazing. Um, so, as a mom of twins and multi-project filmmaker, what's your secret weapon for staying creatively lit without burning out?
um honestly, I feel so grateful to have the life that I have now, where I am finally able to make a living um writing and directing. That has not always been the case. And I think for most creatives, people have a day job. And I had a day job for many, 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 many years, where the only time I had to write were nights and weekends. And since becoming a mom, that's even harder because nights and weekends are devoted to your kids. But I'm finally at this stage in my life where once the kids, and my kids are older now. It was very hard when they were very, very young, but now they're 6 and they go to school during the day. So after I drop them off, I'm in front of my computer from like 9 to 5 and I write. And I
Yeah.
can actually do it almost like like a day job. Like I keep the
Yeah.
hours. Um, and writing is not always easy because sometimes you're just banging your head against like the keyboard. You're like, oh my God, what happens next?
Yeah.
But even in its worst, like, I don't know how to write myself out of this hole, it's still infinitely better than, you know, having to do this on the side. So I have to remind myself, like, this is what I've worked so hard for 20 years towards.
Yeah,
It's like, even when I'm having a bad day, I remind myself of how lucky I am to be able to have this bad
that's
day.
true.
I could be stuck at work and, be coming home at 10 and banging my head then. Like,
Yeah,
now I feel like it's great having this flexibility allows me, yeah, I just attack it as a job from 9 to 5. When my kids come home at 5, that's it. Like,
yeah,
I don't write. Like, it's their time on the weekends. I get to spend time with them versus banging out a script. So I feel extremely lucky and fortunate. And this is at one point in my life, like when I was living in Hong Kong, this was literally like my dream life, but I felt like such an impossible dream. I was like, oh, I just want to like live in LA and make movies. Don't have to have a full time, like don't have to have a day
yeah,
job, and I think for a lot of creatives that is the dream. So now I feel like I've gotten to this place. So I don't feel burned out. I feel lucky that I get to have this life. And I hope
yeah,
I'm afraid I'm going to lose it and have to go back to a day job. And if I do, I do. That's kind
yeah,
of the nature of this business. But so far I've been very lucky that I've been able to keep it going, at least for the last 5 years, to be able to just make a living from either writing or directing.
yeah. It's great. Before we move on to the final segment, we're gonna play a game called the True or False.
Okay.
Okay, and we're about to test your memory
Okay.
and reveal some juicy behind the scenes facts about your films.
Oh my God.
Let's see. Let's see how well you know your own cinematic universe.
Oh my
So,
Okay.
sorry. Okay, are you ready, Emily?
I would have rewatched them last night if I had known, but yes, I'll try my best.
Okay, Girl Hunts Boy is your first time dealing with supernatural storytelling.
True.
Okay. You shot Go Back to China on the exact factory your family owns.
True.
Tall Girl 2 had over 30 musical cues.
Probably true.
Yes, it's true. You've worked with the same cinematographer on more than 3 films.
False.
That's correct. False. You co-wrote a Christmas film while filming another project overseas.
False.
Okay. The title Already Tomorrow in Hong Kong came to you during a layover.
False.
That's false. You once edited your own movie in a hotel room.
Probably true. I've
True.
done shorts and stuff.
Yeah. You've never directed anything in black and white.
I have in film school. So true.
True. Okay. You're allergic to Christmas trees, but still write Christmas films.
False.
Yeah.
That would be a fun premise for a Christmas movie.
Yeah. You plan to cast your twins in a short film by 2026. That's a good idea.
I would like to. True.
Okay, let's move on to the next, to the final segment. You've got Awkwafina producing American Panda, and John M. Chu back in It Was You. What
Mhm.
excites you the most about these collaborations?
I mean, Crazy Rich Asians, I feel like was such a watershed moment for Asian American creatives. And to have the two people like involved with that,
Yeah,
to even be on their radar, let alone be attached to direct projects that they are producing or executive producing. Again, I feel like I throw this word around a lot, but like it felt like a dream. Um, and both of those films, like their production company, like they came to me, like it was a script that they were championing, and then they were looking for a director. Um, and especially someone like John, who I looked up to, kind of coming up in my career. Like he's one of the premier sort of Asian American filmmakers that inspired me to do what I do today.
Yeah.
So yeah, just even kind of even be in the same sort of like conversation and universe as them has been such an incredible experience. But that said, both it's very interesting. Like both American Panda and It Was You, with the caliber of Awkwafina, John M. True, like those films we're still looking for financing and still trying to get them off the ground. Like it's still not easy.
Yeah.
Even after people think, oh, well, after Crazy Rich Asians, it's like I think the doors have opened up more, but it's still, I mean, we still have a ways to go, and it's still an uphill battle for a lot of these Asian American films to get made.
Wow. Wow. Hopefully you'll make it, and I'm
Yeah,
sure you
I
will.
love both projects, so
Yeah, I'm sure you will. Um, if you had to pitch the Untold Emily Ting biopic in one log line, what would it be?
I mean, I feel like Go Back to China was basically already the untold Emily Ting biopic, with a bit of embellishments, but Go Back to China, I would say, is probably as autobiographical as you could get,
Mhm.
or as close to an Emily Ting biopic as you could get.
So, what do you want your legacy as a filmmaker to be remembered for beyond the credits and the festivals?
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like I started out my filmmaking journey without really any career agenda. Like to me, it was honestly, if you had told me then, like, okay, Already Tomorrow in Hong Kong and Go Back to China are the only movies you're ever gonna make. You're never gonna direct movies for Netflix. Like it would have been okay because I felt like I just wanted to be able to tell my story. And
Yeah.
if those stories could help inspire someone to feel seen, or it could embolden someone to tell their own stories, that's all I could ever really ask for. And across all of my films, um, like it really is like just the average person that has reached out, like, oh my God, like thank you for making that movie. Girl Hunts Boy, it's a movie about grief. So, I've gotten messages like I just lost someone recently and that movie really helped me heal. Go Back to China, a lot of Asian American daughters have reached out. Like that's exactly
Yeah.
like my experience with my father. Already Tomorrow in Hong Kong, like to this day, people are like, what happens to them at the end? We need to know. There have been people who told me they moved to Hong Kong because they saw the movie and they were at
Yeah.
a crossroads in their life. And you never think, these little stories that you think of in your head could have such a
Impact. Yeah.
impact, even if it's just on one person. But um and that's honestly, again, like with this industry, you never know when your next film
Mhm.
is coming. You just, it's freelance. You just don't know. Like even if it stops now, like across the 4 films I've made, like I feel like anything else is just gravy. I feel like I've already achieved what I wanted to do with this medium, to be able to tell so many wonderful stories and touch even just one person.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think and another thing I wanted to, and also to embolden sort of other Asian American creatives and filmmakers. I know it's like, oh, it's hard. No one wants to hear or, like watch Asian stories, but there are people out there. Like if I could, if I could help inspire one creative to go and tell their story, and like I just feel like this is a cycle that will continue. So that's really the most I could ever hope for.
Yeah. That's amazing. And finally, what's the one rule you've learned to break in Hollywood that gave you your creative freedom?
Um, I don't know if this is a rule or whatnot, but my advice would be, I mean, having financial freedom equals creative freedom. That's ultimately what it is. And if you want to be hired to be a writer or director or whatnot, it's not really a job that you work your way up towards. Like you just have to go and make your own movie. Like you could be a PA on sets, and I absolutely, like recommend like you should work on sets on a few sets so you understand how it works. But a director is not a job you work up from being a PA to a second AD to a first AD. It's you have to go out. Like I did it through the film festival way. You kind of just have to go and make your own movie and find the financing however way you can. Like I worked at a different industry for like over a decade, and I put money away into a fund that I knew I wanted to make a movie with someday. People buy houses. I bought myself an indie film. You do it whichever way you could to make it happen. So I had complete creative control on already Tomorrow in Hong Kong. It was my first film. I also paid for it myself. I made a lot of mistakes because I was like, oh, I'm the boss. Like I wish someone had given me more notes, but like you learn as you go. Um, so that's really my advice. It's just sort of like if you could get an independent film made, however way you can, whether it's through like Kickstarter or, if like however way you could cobble together, but write something that's like doable for a low budget. Original in Hong Kong is just two people walking and talking. It's actually a very simple movie. It looks big because Hong Kong is a very
Beautiful, yeah.
busy but I literally just dropped my two actors in. We didn't pay for any extras or locked off any streets. We just did it. You could write a very contained horror movie set in a cabin or whatever it is. Keep it small and doable. But if the concept is good, or you could get good performances, or if there's a good hook, you will get noticed. Like that is really, and that would really allow you the most amount of creative freedom. But once you get hired to direct for a Marvel or Netflix or whatever, then yes, you are beholden to them creatively to a certain extent, because they will have notes and they will want to be involved, and you have to kind of honor that, because if you say no and you're resistant to notes, you're just not going to get hired again. That's
Yeah.
how it works.
What do you think about film markets? Or you said festivals is a good place to meet people.
I did things through the film festival route. I mean, I was only able to even get on Netflix's radar because Go Back to China was at South by. So I was able to get my agents that way. They went to South by Southwest, watched the movies, and contacted filmmakers that they were interested in repping. Um, so that's how I came up. I made two indie films on my own. RH in Hong Kong did very well, like commercially, and it definitely put me on the map. And I got my first reps through RH in Hong Kong, but I got better reps after Go Back to China, got into South by, because South by is a bigger film festival. And so if you could make a film and get into a Sundance, South by, Tribeca, you may not get hired by a Marvel right away, but most likely you will get
You're on the right path.
representation,
Yeah.
and then your reps will be able to kind of set you up on this path. So that's sort of what I did. In terms of film markets, I mean, I've worked with sales agents that went to like Cannes Film Market or whatever to try to sell Already Tomorrow in Hong Kong and whatnot. But me on my own, I've never gone to AFM or any of those markets.
Okay.
I've always just done the festival route.
Okay. And how our audience can contact you, Emily?
Yeah, so on social media, I'm most active on Instagram. So you can find me at Emily Ting 917 on Instagram. And I believe you found me on Instagram.
Yeah.
You just DM'd me. And I usually, um, I keep my DM open. So a lot of people have contacted me through that way. I just may not answer right away because it's like on a different tab and I don't always.
Yeah, same
If we're
here.
not connected, I don't usually see it until
Yeah.
like much later. But most of the time, I would reply to someone, especially if they have a question or whatnot. I'm pretty open, pretty approachable that way.
Okay, great. We're coming to an end of the show. That's all, folks. Thank you, Emily. Emily Ting, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for joining me.
For having me.
Thank you.